Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose. In today's episode, I'm bringing to you one of my favorite conversations from the Surviving to Thriving Summit with Elise Schuster and Francisco Ramierez, in which we talk about everything sex and dating related during coronavirus. It is a fun and insightful conversation, and I'm so excited that you've tuned in. If you want to check out how to get access to all the interviews from the Surviving to Thriving Summit, check out the show notes in which we are now offering a lifetime access, including a VIP package upgrade in which you can do coaching sessions with both myself and or my fiance, Dr. John Schinnerer, host of the podcast, The Evolved Caveman. Check out all the information in the show notes. You'll find everything you need there. And I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Be well. I'm really pleased and excited to have this conversation today with Elise Schuster and Francisco Ramierez. Thanks, you guys, for joining our summit. Please introduce yourselves to our viewers and tell us, what is it that you guys do?
Absolutely. So my name is Elise Schuster. I'm a sexuality educator and have worked in youth development as well for a really long time. So I've worked with doctors, I've sold sex toys, I've taught teenagers about sexual health. And now with Francisco, who I'll let Francisco introduce himself in just a second, the two of us run OK So, which is an app that connects mostly young people, although we've got folks as young as 13 and as old as 76, to experts to answer their questions about sex, dating, relationships, identity, all that good stuff.
I love it. Such a necessary platform for people to be able to access, because sometimes we don't know who to turn to. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Francisco, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. As Elise said, my name is Francisco Ramierez, and I'm also a sexuality educator. I've been working in the field for over 20 years and work everywhere from the United Nations to a lot with college students, professionals, and then also do free sex advice on the streets once the streets are back open in New York City and elsewhere, and co-founder happily with Elise on OK So, and I'm thrilled to be here.
I love it. So I just got to ask, the free advice on the street. I mean, I could imagine some people would be really hesitant to sit down in the middle of a public open space and ask a stranger a sex question. On the other hand, it seems like the easiest place to do it because it's more anonymous. So how did you even start to do that? And what were kind of some of the things that people would ask? Because what I want to get a better idea for how you guys can share some of the questions you guys get the most. Because I know just as a therapist in so many couples that I work with and just my adult clients, and actually some of my teenage ones, this is at the root of so many challenges for so many people in their life, but they don't have the language or even know how to communicate or even who to turn to ask these questions.
Yeah, great question. Well, the impetus for free advice, and very similar to OK So, the app, was really personally feeling like I was having all these wonderful conversations with people in my professional life about their sex and dating lives. Maybe as someone working in a clinic or, giving a lecture, whatever it may be. But at some point I had to cut the conversation short to either redirect us to the course at hand, the survey, the STI results, the research questions that we were asking, whatever it is. And I really wanted to have a place where people could feel like they could bring whatever they had on their hearts and their minds about their sex and sexuality without having any sort of parameters really around it. Really wanted to see what happens when people maybe who don't have opportunities to talk so freely, young people, homeless people, and all sorts of people, people discovering new things about their sexuality to come and talk. And the questions to your second question about what did they bring? I mean, I say past tense because now we're all on lockdown, but
we're all on hold.
Yeah, we're all on hold. That's a better way to say it. On pause. The questions really will run the gamut, but it is a lot of gut checking without recognizing that we're doing gut checking. So
explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's sitting down on the chair or on the bench, and eventually I get to a moment where I say, if you had a hunch about what the right thing is to do here,
Mm.
or how you're actually feeling given what just happened, what would that look like? What is that thing that's really alive for you? And then it's a chance to explore that feeling. It's a chance to explore maybe that disappointment or that uncertainty. So it's a lot of checking in with what is happening for you and having an opportunity to talk about that with someone who is really non-judgmental and only invested in you finding out the things that you are deciding are important for yourself.
That's such a beautiful mirroring of someone's experience and so validating for someone, because I know so many people feel shame and judgment and embarrassment and insecurity around things that are arising in their relationships and things that are arising in their sex life. And I mean, I've worked with couples who have been together, 5, 10, 15, 25 years who still are not comfortable talking about their sex life, their needs, their desires, their fantasies, their issues, their dislikes. And, we were chatting a few moments before we hit record, and I was sharing that one of my favorite quotes is, I've heard Esther Perel talk about saying, sex is emotion in motion. And I think that's such a beautiful visual, because when you recognize just how, especially in a committed relationship, it's going to be different than, maybe a short fling or a one night stand. That's obviously going to have different intentions. But looking at a lot of couples who, especially right now during lockdown, are experiencing a lot of challenge, it's likely to show up somewhere other than just how they can talk, right?
I think we often think about sex as somehow being separate from the rest of our lives, when in fact, sex, I think, is really like a microcosm of the rest of our lives. So whatever we believe about ourselves, whether that's that we're fundamentally unworthy of love, or that we're always screwing up, or that we talk too much, or that we are too much, or that we don't deserve nice things, or, any of those things that we might believe, or how we believe that we should be in relationship to the world, we bring all of that with us. It doesn't stop when we sort of quote unquote enter the bedroom.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things for people, is that they feel sort of surprised that all of this is showing up, but really it shows up even more because we're at our most vulnerable and we're trying to kind of have this connection with somebody else. And so whatever that kind of baggage is it actually kind of gets to rear its head even more.
Yeah. Yeah. And Francisco's nodding. Yes. Nodding in silent agreement. But yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Well, and I think one of the reasons for both Okay So and for Free Advice that we think that it's so valuable for people to have a space like that is that when we're talking about the layers that are underneath a lot of the questions that people have, I think, we've both had this experience, and we have it all the time on Okay So, where someone asks a question and that's not really the question, right? There's like 2 or 3 or 4 layers down where.
Can you give an example where maybe they don't, because I imagine it could be a possibility that they don't have the language for the question they're trying to ask, or maybe they're feeling shame for asking the direct question. So what would be an example where you could clearly see, here's what you're asking, but here's really what you really mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, so the first thing I would say is that I think a lot of these questions, there are sort of several themes that are kind of the underlying themes behind a lot of questions, right? So am I normal? Is this person going to judge me? Am I broken, right? Is something wrong with me? So often a lot of questions are really that question beneath them. But the first one that pops to mind for me is someone who was writing about how she didn't really enjoy having sex with her partner. And so initially there was sort of some back and forth around like, what were they actually doing? And did those things feel good? And eventually sort of realizing that she had just kind of generally a lot of shame around having sex, or a lot of discomfort that made her nervous. So we dug a little bit deeper, and it turned out she had a history of sexual trauma. And we probably couldn't have gotten there at the very beginning. We needed a little bit of time to build that trust before she was ready to say that, and to kind of, and then she was able to see that connection and realize that that was an area where she needed to kind of spend some time. And it certainly is not something you can Google, right? So I think that for me was really such an important moment of seeing that, where is someone going to get to that place of
Mm-hmm.
understanding and be able to face something that feels so challenging to face. Like that's a huge, asking someone to look at that in their lives is a really big thing.
It's as vulnerable as spreading your legs wide open.
Yeah. And so of course those two things, right? I think we often also forget that like our bodies and our minds are connected. And so we, again, kind of expect that we can compartmentalize those two things. So yeah, it was a really powerful moment. It was really early on in Okay So too. And so it was this kind of moment where I was like, yeah, we're here for a reason. We're doing the right thing.
Well, you're holding a space and a container for it, you know, and like I commented on Francisco's story of, you know, you're giving people the ability to attune with their experience in a really safe way. And even just by asking, you know, what are you feeling, or doing that gut check, it's just holding the containers to say, I recognize you may not be able to do this on your own or even trust your own interpretation of what you're experiencing. So here, let me hold this space with you. Francisco, I looked like you were going to add something.
Yeah, you know, I think about all of the conversations where it feels like it's where somebody on the app or at Free Advice, for example, will kind of sit down or present and say, why did this happen? Why is this person a jerk? Why would somebody do such a thing? Or like, why does this always happen? Or whatever it may be. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it's less about trying to decode someone else or to translate to try to make sense of something that, quote, went wrong or that didn't go as we expected, and more about an exposition, a sharing, and a tapping into what is the thing that I'm feeling right now. And so a lot of the times when people have those conversations where things are bubbling up, and I feel myself also as a listener getting excited and invested and leaning in and all that kind of thing, find a moment to pause and say, it's a lot. Like, what are you feeling? What's the thing that's like, you know, alive for you? And you have to ask that question sometimes in different ways, use different language, repeat that question or give examples before sometimes people are able to tune into the thing that they just really need to say, that needs to be heard by some other source. And a lot of times, fortunately or maybe unfortunately, we don't have that other person who's there present to be able to listen to us, or maybe not in that moment. Right. So I'm so, you know, proud of Okay So and the work that we do, that we have, that we are then those humans that people can come to witness what it is that somebody is happening upon.
Yeah, because that other person that they may need to say it to or forgive or release may not be available, literally or figuratively. And yet you don't need the other person there to be able to forgive them. Like, that's the internal work. We have the assumption that the other person needs to be present to help process, and we don't.
Yeah.
We often don't know who to turn to that's safe and non-judgmental. And oftentimes a stranger is easier than someone you know very well.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good, frankly, you know, that person is maybe not available, right, to continue the processing, because it may not always be helpful. And what I tell
they
people,
might gaslight you and say, no, that's not what you're feeling.
Oh my gosh, 100, right? So what I have found personally helpful, and what I tell the people that I work with a lot, is that, you know, if you don't have the opportunity, or perhaps it's the luxury, the chance to end things or to have that sort of follow-up conversation with someone, what if we live right now put our own sort of ending to this? How might we sort of tell this story from start to as much of a finish as we can give it to now, and do something with it? Put it in a box, put it in a package, put it on, you know, a shelf somewhere, wherever you feel like you want to, so that you can have some kind of moment of understanding, maybe not clarity, but sort of
a little bit of closure. Yeah.
Peace, closure.
Or at least a settling of the nervous system around it. Because I think without that ability of dropping in, you're staying up here where the cognitive, you know, reaction is to spin and stay in that reactivity where we're spiraling.
Yeah.
100%. I sure hope people give you some good tips on your free advice, and that you're not doing it 100% for free, because you're doing really good work.
You know, with both Okay So and with Free Advice, it's we free advice have never accepted a tip, and okay, so is really built around the belief that people have, and free advice, that people deserve this information,
Yeah, it's
and that
beautiful.
we, Elise and I, work hard to figure out a way to make that free for people, because you know, a lot of people who we interact with, younger folks, like I said, homeless people, for example, in the park, wherever it may be, just don't have that ability. And I also personally don't want to make people feel like it has to be that someone's well-being has to be attached to like some kind of monetary exchange. That somehow, my maybe too optimistic hope is that somehow in this world we find a way to take care of each other in a way that everyone has their needs met.
Well, the whole world might not catch up, but your guys are definitely doing it. So thank you for that work you're doing, because what you're really giving people is this opportunity, which is the whole focus of the summit, is how can I take my challenge and grow from it? How can I not get stuck in my narrative or in the past or in my trauma and have it define me forever?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's hard work to do on your own. And you know, even in the kind of just on point to what you were saying, like even with the summit of how John and I put it together, you know, normally summits, the interviews are live for 3 days and then you got to buy the whole thing immediately. And like, I don't know about you, but when I buy something, I'm not getting to it in a day. Like my life doesn't work like that. And, you know, we're having this available for 30 days. And if you want to buy it later, great. But for 30 days, and we got an email yesterday, someone saying, thank you for your, what was the word they used, but it was, I forgot the exact word, but you know, how we showed up in leadership by going against the grain of how people do things. And I think that in and of itself is how we make change. We got to go against the grain of how people receive information, of how we make ourselves available. Because that's being in service. Like that's values driven, that's service driven. And I think when you're operating from that place, people come to you because that feels so authentic.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I think so much of the not to like go in on sort of the various worlds around sexual health, but I think when you think about how this information exists in the world right now, we see either for-profit companies where you have to pay to have access to it, or nonprofits that are, you know, a lot of the nonprofit grant world is so focused on the outcomes that you have that it sort of forgets that there are real human beings behind those numbers. And so I think that we're really trying, and not that other places are not, but that for us, it's really about like, how can we bring the most human and authentic experience to this possible?
I love that.
Even if it means that maybe our numbers are a little bit different, right?
But you know,
because that's where you start. That's how you get.
And that's the and that's okay. You know, I remember going to, I don't know if you guys know who Brendan Burchard is, but he's, you know, a great kind of email marketer. And we went to his conference and got all inspired. And he was like, look, if you focus on the numbers, you're out of your intention. Yeah. And if you focus on, hey, if I made one person, if I made an impact, that's one soul that I changed. It's not a number, it's a soul.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, wow, I impacted just one person's life, just one. That's amazing.
Yeah. I always think about when I was selling sex toys, a couple came in and I would guess that they were in their 70s. And she walked up to me and said, I'm here because I have no idea where my clitoris is. Mm. And she said it sort of like, obviously with this kind of sense of like, I should know this already. And I was so excited. Right. That was sort of I think often the experience that people have when they talk to a good sex educator is that they come with something that they feel worried about and shameful of. And they think that we're going to be like, yeah, oof, girl, like, where have you been? Right. When usually like the vast majority of the time, actually we're like, you're here. That's great. Like, we're so excited to meet you here. I would love nothing more than to spend the next 30 minutes showing you in a book and explaining to you how to find your clitoris. Like, it brings me joy, right? It doesn't matter that how long it took you to get here. You're here, and we're so thrilled.
As a mindfulness teacher, I used to teach mindfulness to kids in a classroom setting for 4 years. And one of my favorite exercises was where I would take them outside and have them look around to notice something they've never seen before, in a way of having beginner's mind and being really present. And these kids, this one particular class was pretty cocky. They were about 5th grade. And the view of where the school was kind of up on a hill, and it had this gorgeous view, and it was aptly named because it was largely named after the view. And so we're all standing out on the porch, and this girl, when we finally shared, she said, "I've never noticed the view before." And, my instinctual reaction was judgment, like, wait, what? Like, you've been driving up and down this hill for 6 years. How did you not notice? But of course, I didn't respond in that way, but that was like the internal knee-jerk reaction. But my response to her was, now that you see it, you'll never not see it again. And that's awareness. And that's the beauty of awareness. So what you did for the 70-year-old woman is, it doesn't matter you've never seen it before, although that's sad. And now that you know, you have this awareness forever. And that's the beauty of awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's
so many things.
I think, of all the things that, we might assume about people that they, that, I don't know, that, X many people that most people have had like a kiss by this age, or most people have done this. There's so many things. I mean, I think of all the people who have come up to me, and we've talked for like a few minutes, and then within moments they're like crying, grown adult men in front of me who I've only known for 2 or 3 minutes, and they're sharing something that they've never told anyone before.
Wow.
So the degree to which we are walking around, this is my hypothesis. I don't have the research on this, but
sounds like you got enough observational data.
Thank you very much.
Definition of what you see.
So my hypothesis, thank you, is that whoever we are, myself included, absolutely, are walking around this earth thinking or believing that there is at least one thing that is sort of secretly wrong with us, that people really shouldn't know about. And even if we've done some like good self-work, we understand, especially around our sexuality, well, I'm liberated in this way, I'm thoughtful, I'm aware, etc. But this one thing is kind of weird, and it's kind of outside of the bounds. So it's kind of worth not sharing or even discussing or thinking about. And my hypothesis is that nearly all of us are walking around in the world with that thing that thinks that makes us think that we are different, and often to the point of not worthy of complete acceptance, right? That, accept me like 80% of the way because I'm generally a good person. But this one thing about me and my sexuality, it's actually really messed up. So I'm not going to be deserving of all of the wonderful sort of treasures.
Such deep shadow work to acknowledge that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do on your own, and is gonna eventually seep into effective relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think a lot of people, because, we were talking about this before we hit record as well, because we as a society don't really know how to talk to each other, how to listen, like all of these sort of effective communication skills. I think a lot of people don't feel like their relationship is a safe place to talk about that, because they don't know if they say it, how the other person is going to respond.
Well, and they often get conditioned in other aspects of their relationship not to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I'm, expressing irritation over, gee, didn't wipe all the crumbs off the counter, or, the dishwasher got loaded in a way that things are still dirty, and I get shut down for voicing a very small little minor, hey, can I get some extra help here? The likelihood that I'm going to speak up around something in my sex life is like, no way. Like if I got shut down for the crumbs, I am not touching the sex life with a 10-foot pole, because I'm going to completely get rejected.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's, it's the microcosm, like everything shows up there, but amplified. So whatever you believe about your relationship and how it's functioning, you're going to believe that times 10 about how it's going to work for your sex life. And I think, very rarely, like one of the things that I talk about a lot for couples, especially, is to set aside time to talk about your relationship and to talk about your sex life. That is, often we have these conversations like right before, in the middle of, or right after, which is basically those three are like the last times that you should be talking about it, because everyone's emotions are so charged. No one is able to kind of take a step back. Mm-hmm. And so really trying to have a regular time to check in, and it gives us a space to say to someone, I love this, but I wish that this was a little bit different. There's something I want to tell you. It feels hard. But if we're not doing that generally already in our relationship, it's really hard to start with, let's set aside time for our sex life.
You just took the words out of my mouth of it. It's a great practice if you have those skills, at least to some extent. And yet people, when they most need it, recognize it in the face of challenge. Mm-hmm. So if the emotions are strong and it's harder to access perhaps some of their tools because the emotions have taken over by that point, there's some real barriers to entry there. No pun intended, or perhaps pun intended.
Well, and I think that's part of why it's so, I think thinking about it as a practice and as a regular thing can be so helpful, because it takes, instead of only having that meeting when there's a problem, so to speak, right? You're having it every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it is. And so it takes a bit of the charge out of it. And I think allows those conversations to have a little bit more space to breathe, which can be really helpful.
Yeah. And it feels like now is such an opportune time to do that.
We've got the time.
Hopefully
we've had time like we've never had before. So no one can blame time as the reason they're not checking in with their partners.
Yeah.
Unless you have kids, in which case then maybe not.
Yeah. But I mean, I immediately go to thinking of all the creative ways that we might tiptoe into these kind of conversations. Like what if it's a Google Doc that you have for yourself, or it's a shared Google Doc, or it's just one word, at a time. It's kind of creating like a compendium of the things that to be true, things that you wish you could say, things that you're now ready to say, however you want to sort of organize
I like
things.
that.
It feels like it's a really, I'm going to agree 100% with Elise, right? That it takes, like Elise said, it's a practice, right? It takes decision, one, must make that decision, say, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to say this thing. I'm going to have this conversation. But I would say if somebody's listening now and they feel like, wow, that's a lot, which sometimes it is, my invitation would be to just first become aware of the thing that you're feeling and really hang out with that awareness, not just be like, I'm frustrated, but like notice that you're frustrated. And then when you're, taking a shower and you have a moment to yourself, like be curious about that frustration. What does it feel like? Where does it sit? What is the thing that really feels most frustrating about? And don't look at it with an attitude of this must be solved, or this must be resolved, or this will never get solved, or it will never get resolved. Because it will. There will be, these things are always in motion. Going back to what you said earlier, but it's going to require first that introspection or just curiosity about what it is that we're experiencing.
Well, and I think one of the things that's so helpful, and one of the areas in which I guide my clients a lot in their relationships, is to get really curious around what's the story they're believing right now. Because I find so much of sexual disconnection results from believing a story that's not actually happening, and making those assumptions, and then believing the assumptions and acting on the assumptions without ever clarifying, hey, I've interpreted your response to mean this. I've interpreted, when I made this advance and you didn't catch what I was, pick up what I was dropping, so to speak, that must mean you're no longer attracted to me. And if I believe that and act on that, then I'm not going to make the advances, and I'm going to now start resenting you actually.
Yeah.
And so I think, just to get really curious, what's the story I'm believing right now? And then to even ask your partner, what's the story you're believing right now?
Yeah. We talk with folks about that all the time on Okay So, and I think it's something that Brene Brown talks about as well, which is where sort of I learned about it. It kind of blew my mind, right? When she talked about it. And so it's been really, talking with folks about it on Okay So has been really fun, because I think if you think about being, I'm in my 30s, if you think about being 18 and having someone say to you, what's the story that you're telling yourself right now? Like, people are sort of like, I don't understand, right? Because I think at least, hopefully by the time you're getting in, I think sort of becoming an adult and like living for a while as an adult, you start to get some sense of that it like, that there is a story. You might not be able to articulate it that way. You might not be able to couch it all the
different
time.
language to be able to connect with it.
Yeah.
But there's
but
still
I
a
think
belief. There's still a belief you've got.
Yeah.
Or
But
there's
when you're
a hope.
teenager,
Yeah.
it's just the world. Like you're just swimming in it and you can't, I think it's very hard, especially as a teenager, to sort of take a step back and see that your reality and other people's realities are completely different, right? You're just so sort of enmeshed in it. And it is a really incredible experience to get to talk with someone about this idea that we're telling ourselves stories all the time, and so is everyone else, and to kind of watch that literally like shift the way that they see the world.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's
we also
huge.
talk with folks a lot about like, can you make a list of the other possible stories, right? Like the sort of left me on red, not texting me back, like thing is huge, right? And so, we talk a lot about like, it could be that their phone died. It could be that they're with family, or they're in class, or they're on another call.
So then it becomes choose the interpretation that serves you best.
Exactly.
Because we're going to default to the one that likely isn't going to serve us and validate the story we believed.
Yeah.
And it may or may
why
not
is
be
that
true.
the thing that we're assuming, right? I think you can kind of, if you're assuming that the other person hasn't texted you back because they're cheating on you, what does that mean? Like that is like a huge signal about what's happening in your relationship. So that gives us, we can kind of start to dig a little deeper into that.
That's so funny that you mentioned the on-read. I was at a college recently-ish, and before all this stuff went down, and we had a more than 1 hour conversation specifically on the subject of on-read, etc.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating for a lot of reasons, but what struck me the most was the degree to which the like emotion, like the personal emotional interpretation or feeling that so many of us had in that room, where like this is personal, or this feels like an attack, or this feels something. And the only thing that this goes a bit back to I think what we were maybe saying earlier, is the only thing that seemed to really diffuse, I guess, a lot of that conversation was people literally, this giant, dorm room of folks, we all went around and said, like, what does it feel like? What are you feeling in that moment? And then that's when the sort of valve opened, right? That people had a chance to voice their worries and their concerns and the things that they've maybe been told from other people, or that they that this, as you're saying, the stories that they've been telling themselves. Because when they're bottled up, then that's when people come to us in this massive distress. And sometimes it's really hard to get them to even, imagine these other scenarios, or the other scenarios we can say. I mean, my therapist does that for me all the time. She's like, can you imagine another, reason why this might have happened? And I'm like, yeah, I could imagine it for you. Like,
easier said than done, right?
Yeah, but I'm not interested in taking it in. And the reason I'm not interested in taking it in often is because I'm at that emotional block wall. So I've come to this moment here, and I can't get past it because it's serving a purpose for me, right?
I
If
always
I'm on this side of the wall, right,
Yeah.
and I don't get past it, then I get to stay with my frustration. But if I can acknowledge this frustration here and just be with it and tend to it and hang out with it for a week or as long as I need to, then I can actually make a real walk around, or a path around this thing that seems like it's in the middle of my path.
Yeah. And one of my favorite questions I ask people is, how is it serving you to stay stuck?
Mm-hmm.
And the immediate response is, oh, it's not. This sucks. I hate this. I'm getting all of this, whether it's symptomology or anxiety, whatever it is. And yet there's always a secondary benefit to staying stuck. And I think it's the confirmation biases we look for to validate why we feel the way we do, right?
Yeah.
It's harder work to get work over the wall, Francisco. It's easier
it's
to
terrifying.
I'm just going to stay here and play. I don't want to use the word victim because that feels really harsh, but not take ownership of either my piece of this or the work I'm contributing to making the situation harder. And one of the things that we're seeing so much right now during this pandemic, and people being home with their partners 24/7, like there's two big layers I want to bring up. One is they're home with their partners 24/7 and likely with their kids as well. So this is, constant connection is breeding a lot of frustration, irritation, resentment, annoyance. I saw a whole Facebook post by actually a neighbor of mine where there must have been 170 comments around, okay, ladies, what are you noticing about your husband that is driving you batty? And like the comments ranged from simple things to like, he's blinking too loud. Like the level of irritation has gotten so high.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've been saying throughout this summit is in relationships, what was ever under a flashlight of awareness prior to all this is now under a floodlight of awareness. Like whatever was bubbling beneath the surface, you no longer can hide from. We don't have the defenses of going to the gym or the bar or girls' night out or Taco Tuesday to not face what's here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's likely going to transfer directly into their sex lives.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think often we do the same thing in our sex lives, right? Is that we sort of we avoid having the hard conversations, partially because we don't know how to have them, but partially because it is the other, whatever's on the other side of that conversation feels scarier because it's unknown than where we're currently at. And because at least that we understand where we are to some degree, right? Even if it feels confusing or we feel like we hate it, it's a known entity. And I think it's interesting to think about that, especially at this time when we're living with so much unknown in our lives. None of us know what the next week is going to look like, let alone month, year. And so I think it's an opportunity. In one way, I think it's overwhelming, right? If we're dealing with so much unknown, can we take on more unknown, or are we maxed out on the amount of uncertainty we can have in our lives? Or can we use this moment as an opportunity to get comfortable with the unknown and to see who are we when we don't know what next week looks like or next month looks like, and to let go of, I think, what is often sort of a false sense of security that we do know, because in reality, none of us know. We never know what the next week or month is going. Something super intense could happen, right?
So even our security we had, prior to March, at least in this country, was still only a perception of security.
Yes, exactly. And that's all that it ever is. And so, and that's the case for our families and our relationships and our sex lives and all of these things. And so I think anyone who's ever like physically birthed a baby knows that on the other side of that is like a whole new world that you're trying to figure out that you didn't quite understand was coming when you got pregnant.
Conceptual, but it wasn't experiential.
And then here you are with your new body, like trying to figure it all out. So, I think there's an opportunity here to say, I'm going to embrace the uncertainty in all of the areas of my life. And if I can take, if I can make it around COVID, then like maybe I can say this thing to my partner and see what's on the other side. Because the other thing that we say all the time on Okay So is that most of the time, what's on the other side is better than what's happening right now, and almost not worse, right? I think we have this idea that things are going to explode, etc. Right. But even if in the short term it might feel that way, ultimately, right? I regret the times in my life when I didn't have the hard conversation. I never regret the times in my life when I had the hard conversation.
Well, it's forward movement. It takes you on that journey forward towards somewhere that you clearly need to go.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask one thing, or maybe just perhaps even point it out and give couples permission. And I'd like to get your input on that. And then I want to talk about dating in COVID right now and sex in COVID with maybe a non-long-term partner, because that's a whole different area to address. But to finish up with, marriage or long-term partnerships or cohabitation, one of the things that I am noticing are the ways in which the stress and anxiety and overwhelm and perhaps depression or hopelessness, how that is affecting sex life and how that's okay. And so perhaps maybe on the inverse of couples who've maybe had a really healthy and active and engaged sex life might be now experiencing a decrease in desire or frequency or enjoyment or pleasure. And I just want to speak for a few minutes around the normalcy of extra added emotional experiences, such as what we're experiencing, and how not to overjudge that maybe your relationship's not in a bad place, right? If the sex is emotion and motion, maybe when that's not always completely an accurate reflection of the relationship, but maybe to honor, wow, like I'm so overwhelmed in homeschooling the kids, so to speak, or, wondering about my career. The last thing I want to do is think about how to pleasure my partner.
Yeah.
So
Oh my
stressed.
gosh.
I don't even feel like that would be pleasuring to me. Right. So can you guys speak to that aspect for a little bit? Because I think that's a really accurate example of what's happening.
Absolutely. Like, I know you're just even drawing a hypothetical, but my heart goes out to that hypothetical because,
but I know it's happening. I have the clients telling me.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we are we have various moments of awareness of how unique of a time this is, right? And we may be feeling a loss of control. We may be grieving. We may suddenly have lots of time on our own, or the opposite. You may suddenly find yourself with seemingly no time of your own. And this goes in waves and continues to go in waves. And I would never want anyone to diminish that sort of reality and the impact that will have on someone in their relationship. So the first thing that I think of is I think of two things, actually. One is kindness to yourself. Like, this is a wonderful opportunity to challenge yourself, to see how kind you can be to yourself, to experiment with what kindness can look like, whether it's super intentional or it's something that happened, without even you sort of creating that moment of kindness, seemingly. But how can you be kind to yourself? Whether that's eliminating the judgment, noticing the judgment that you have about the sex that you may or may not be having, the kindness. As we are kinder to ourselves, we are then kinder, I believe, to the people that we're cohabitating with, right? So
100%.
the blinking loudly becomes less frustrating because we're a little bit, we give people, and that's my second thought, is a bit more buffer. So buffer is like my magic word for things these days. So buffer around a meeting, buffer around a call, buffer around expectation. I thought I was going to go to bed by 11 and it's 2. Buffer. Buffer.
Give yourself that space. When you say that, I imagine that scene in Dirty Dancing where he's like, "This is my space." Like we just have like a little protective like bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We all really deserve that, and I can't obviously wave a magic wand and make that the case for people. But among everything else, I would say to really just feel your feelings. I think in this moment, the only way out is through.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're feeling when you're not having as much sex, or when the sex feels weird because now, the dog is always scratching at the door, or whatever these distractions might be? What is it that you're feeling about this? And if I could, hold your hand, not that moment because I'm not in the bedroom with you,
right.
But like around that moment, how can we sort of feel our way through this moment?
And I love that you said those, and I would add, and at least I'd love to hear how you would chime in, but I just want to also interject and add, I think if you're noticing this in yourself, right, that overwhelm of emotion or disconnect from reality in terms of wanting to have to face it because it's hard to, after you've had the self-kindness and you've created that buffer, I think the best thing to do is just let your partner in on where you're at. Because again, it's so easy to make the assumptions, he or she's turning down my advances because I put on some extra weight because I'm home eating Cheez-Its right now and I can't get to the gym. So I'm assuming it's all about me, right? It's easy to make those personalizations. And so as hard as it is, even to just name and acknowledge, hey, babe, I just got to let you know, like, I'm so feeling stressed and anxious that it's not you. We're good. I'm grateful for this relationship and it brings a great source of comfort to me. And I'm noticing in my body I don't have the extra energy to expend or give, and I just need to nurture that. So can you just know it's not you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the more that we can recognize that this is a different reality, and that business as usual, or sort of the way that we were operating before, or all the shoulds that we were holding on to, that we need to try as much as we can to let those things go, and to just take it each day at a time and see where we are. Because I think, certainly what I've been noticing among folks is that there seems to be kind of an ebb and flow, right? That some days are good, and then all of a sudden the next day you don't want to get out of bed, right? And then a couple of days
within
later,
that, that's going to affect the dance of interconnection and independence that we're going to want.
Yeah. And chances are we're not going to be on the same, in the same dance
at
pattern as our partner, right?
It would be nice, wouldn't it? It would make it so much easier.
Yeah, it'd be so great, but it probably isn't going to happen. So how can we probably I think in so many areas of our lives, we have to develop new systems. We need a new system for how to go to the grocery store. We need a new system for how to check the mail. We need a new system for how to work. We need a new system for our relationship that maybe involves more regular check-ins, that maybe involves shorthand, developing some shorthands for sort of, here's where I'm at today. Here's how I'm doing, this is what I feel like. And breaking out of the boxes that we kind of can get into, I think, all the time in our relationship, but especially around sex, the expectations that we have around, we have to have an orgasm, or the following activities have to occur. And so maybe it's, maybe mutual masturbation is what we're doing tonight. And that's amazing. We've never really tried that before. Or we're cuddling, or we're taking a bath together.
Well, and that's one of the things, that's one of the things that, gosh, there's so much I want to talk about with you, but for sake of time, I'll wrap it up soon. But that's one of the things that I will often then guide clients in doing is, can you still look for ways to have intimate connection that takes the sex off the table? Can you look for points of intimacy that are simple without it having to go somewhere? Is that a matter of just watching a movie and taking turns rubbing each other's feet? Is that giving a shoulder massage? Is that just lighting a candle to create just a softness in the room? Is that taking a bath together? I think we can easily assume to maintain intimacy means we always have to be in bed and it always has to end in mutual orgasm, which is great. And how can we stay connected even if we feel disconnected? And that's something I think couples can step towards, because that will also help quiet down the nervous system of the overwhelm of emotions without the pressure of, I don't feel like performing right now, or I'm exhausted, but we can still connect.
Yeah. And sorry, I would just say very quickly that all of these questions around I have a different sex drive than my partner, I'm stressed out, I don't all of these things we were getting more questions on, so about that before all of this, because our lives are going to ebb and flow that way anyway, right? So it's not just like a pandemic coping strategy. It's recognizing that no one's life is smooth sailing all the time. And so we need to develop these skills and kind of get out of some of those patterns for the next time that one of us in this relationship is stressed out, or the next time that one of us is sick, or our kid is sick, or whatever it is, because it's going to happen again.
And I want to just add, and then I'm going to shift to the next question, but I think this is the last important piece to add to this. And Francisco, I'll give you a chance to see if there's anything else you want to finish off. But with, oftentimes couples get stuck in that notion we said for just a moment ago, if I don't have the time, it's not going to magically appear. So you got to consciously create the time. And Esther Perel talks about this as well, as we schedule every important meeting in our life. And there's nothing less spontaneous by scheduling a check-in or scheduling sex.
Yeah.
It just demonstrates the value in which we're placing on our partner, on the relationship, on an interaction to maintain or connect intimately or vulnerably, or just with communication. So I think right now, on one hand, yes, we have all the time in the world because we're not going anywhere, but that doesn't mean we're always available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, when you say the scheduling of things on the calendar, my mind starts racing in a fun and exciting way. I absolutely hear you and agree 100% with what you're saying. And I can hear the voices of other people who I've talked to over the years who have said, well, but still it's not spontaneous because then everyone knows anal at 9 or whatever it may be. And so I would say to those people and have said, well then, have mystery appointments on your calendar and don't necessarily tell your partner what's happening during that time, or maybe don't even plan what's happening during that time.
Yeah.
I have in my archives like entire lists of like mystery dates that one can plan sort of on the spot, right?
That's fun.
And it could just be something really sweet like watching a Disney movie, or it could be something like eating food off of each other that you've never tried that's just silly and probably messy, but you've got time to clean it up now.
So let's transition that. That's a good kind of lead into dating right now during COVID. And there's so many layers to this. So one of the questions that I know many people, and I've got clients who are single post-divorce, that's mostly the age group I'm working with, although I've got some teenagers as well. But usually, they're out there on the dating apps and they've been talking to people for a while. And now it's like oh shit, are we ever going to get to meet? And if we do decide to meet, how do I have the conversation of what kind of social distancing have you been having? Are you, quote, safe to be around? So like now it's like before we've ever would have had like the STD talk when, having a new partner, we now have to have this whole new level of expose your whereabouts to me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these new challenges. So what do you guys have, some tools and advice around those in the dating world? Because everything up till now has pretty much been talking about established relationships in which you're living with and quarantining with, even if it's not super established. Because I know some couples have forced into living together after 3 months just because of circumstance. So that's a whole different story. But those in the dating world and being online and what can you speak to about that?
So many ideas. The first is, and Elise and I have masters in public health. So to be clear, that's a big part of our bent. I don't want to speak for Elise, but I know for me, practicing this physical distancing is really important. So just say that, for the people who are able to do that, not all of us have that opportunity, of course, to do that, but in keeping our neighbors and our people who we interact with or don't on a daily basis safe. It's important to keep up with the physical distancing. And so what can people do? There are so many options. I mean, I would start with actually really thinking a lot more and really leaning into this distance dating business. And I don't mean like distance walk in the park, although we can certainly talk through that because I'm coaching my friends and clients and people through that all the time right now. But really leaning into like, video, not just a video chat, like, but actually having video dates. Like you get in your pajamas, you get your lighting right, and then you call each other and you get to know each other. And that may sound corny, but here is what I know. A lot of times people are running around on dating apps, etc., and just going on dates and quickly connecting with people, but we're a lot of it is kind of like passing ships in the night in a way because we're not spending a lot of time to get to know that person. Yeah. So if you spend more time to get to know that person online via FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it may be, you have this really special moment that we may never have again.
It's actually kind of a gift on some level.
It's a huge gift. It's a huge gift.
I actually think it's pretty cool. And I know it's a bad comparison because it's reality TV and it's contrite, but it's somewhat of that Love is Blind show of like, how can I get to know someone when I'm not physically with them? And there's a lot of depth to that. As a therapist, I took a lot of value in the time in that reality show, but people are able to do now. And like you said, like create video dates and get creative.
Yeah.
Because the creativity is necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I can add on to that, I think about it also being a great opportunity to be more thoughtful about what it is that you actually want from this interaction.
Intention is always one of my favorite words.
Right? Like name the why, right? Normally, me living here in New York, I know lots of people are always on, I used to do this myself, go on what I called micro dates. 45-minute date here, 15-minute buffer, another 45-minute date, and then move on with my life, probably go have a meeting or go have dinner, whatever it is. But not really thinking about what it is that I'm actually looking for. So to your original question, which I think is so great about like, how do you manage, like coughing on someone or someone maybe coughing on you or licking on your neck and all these kinds of things. Well, before you even get to that point, think about what it is that the need or needs that you might actually be trying to fulfill. Yeah. So maybe, get ready for a list I'm going to just come up with off the top. Maybe you just want to feel cute. Maybe you want a reason to put on your foundation and your concealer and run around in a sundress and just feel the wind in your hair. Yeah. And having someone witness that is valuable to you. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe you want to look across at someone who's cute. Maybe you actually do want to canoodle, but maybe that canoodling is about the sensation of touch, right? And what are the different ways that we can fulfill those needs through safer interactions, right? So, if someone is strictly really, on lockdown and is not going out, for example, but is doing a lot of these dates, but they know that physical touch is important to themselves. Okay, well, so of course there are toys, etc. But maybe, for example, like what I do in my apartment here is I have like a crummer that, when you go to like a kind of nice restaurant, they
scoop up the crumbs off the table.
The crumbs, right? So I have like a crummer kind of thing, and I use it on my sheets these days, like all the time now. It's like this deluxe crummer thing. And I do that not because I'm a slob, but because
Francisco, what are you eating in your bed that you're cleaning up so much?
I mean, listen, I live alone now and it is lockdown, so I'll do whatever I feel like to you, but it's true. Goldfish usually.
Yeah. Understood.
But but then I really get to luxuriate in that feeling of the clean, fresh sheet on my skin. And not that is the same as dating. I'm not going to pretend
but it's providing you a sensation, a sensory experience in which we can allow that sense of touch to still be important. I had that visual as you were saying that, like imagining lying wrapped in like a chenille blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I was on a Zoom call the other day with someone who I hadn't talked to in a long time. And when we initially got on the call, I was like, is that a dog? Like, what does she have? And it was this like super fluffy, like white pillow, like a shag carpet kind of pillow that she was just like holding while she was on the call. And I was like, yeah, I love this. Right. And I couldn't figure out what it was.
It's a very strange thing. The other day, my kids and I were out in the backyard and, was in our bathing suits. I've got a pool and spa in the backyard, and we got a puppy back in October. And it was the first time I held the puppy just in my bathing suit. So there was more of my skin exposed. And it was just like, it's just so soft. But like there's different ways I think we can get some of those sensory needs. It doesn't have to be sexual, but it's a sensory experience that can be pleasurable in the absence of different things. Did that give a really weird image of me? Like I wasn't naked. I was in my bathing suit, but like, like he's just so soft.
Yeah, totally. Taking a bath, right? I feel every time Francisco will attest to this. I feel like every few days, everyone I talk to in New York, I'm like, has the sunlight been on your skin? Because in California, like I'm in the sun every day, and I know that is, even if you're sitting in your, in a window or something like,
yeah.
And I think, again, a lot of it is about the intentionality of it. It's, the same way when we talk about sort of general self-care things, that walking outside and feeling really stressed and not paying attention is one thing, but saying like, I am going to stop what I'm doing, take some deep breaths, feel the sun on my face, feel the warmth of this bath, feel the softness of this pillow, feel the freshness of these sheets, right? Whatever it is,
softness of the puppy.
Yes. That like, it is it is about the intention and the sort of mindfulness that we bring to that moment that allows it to really seep into us in a different way than if we're just kind of doing it.
Well, and I imagine too, there is another really great opportunity if we're looking at this as a gift, and going back to this, what you were bringing up with Francisco of, the intention around the interaction. It gives us the opportunity to recognize when we are doing the serial dating and the swiping out of anxiety or fear or loneliness of being with ourselves.
Yeah.
And so perhaps maybe this is a time to not date and to lean into, can I just be with myself right now and not be distracting myself from the fear of loneliness or the emotions of what I'm defining as being alone in a negative way, and just get creative of how can I learn to be with myself in a different way right now? Because I think there's a lot of mindless swiping.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my
and
gosh.
I think so often we spend so much of our lives trying to figure out how to be what other people want us to be, instead of figuring out who we really are at our core and what we truly need. And so it doesn't matter how much swiping or dating we do in real life or on video or whatever it is, that if we are always trying to be what someone else needs us to be, instead of being who we truly are and getting really comfortable with that and embracing that, then we're never going to find the relationships that are truly fulfilling for us.
Yeah.
And so I really think that along with sort of rethinking what dating looks like, we have an opportunity to rethink what we want out of that experience, and to really find who we are, so that the next time we go on a date, we're like, this is me and I love it.
Unapologetically.
Right? Yes. Take it or leave it. Right. And that if you're at leave it, then we're the wrong fit. And that I'm glad I know that now than 6 months from now.
So true.
I would also add to this, how do people, because I see from my window, I see I really don't know, but I see what I imagine are some of those people on maybe dates or canoodling or getting close. And at least I hear the stories via colleagues and friends and whatnot, clients on Zoom. And that is, that people are wondering, like, how do you go on a date? How do you walk in the park? Should you walk in the park? Can you have dinner? Can you make each other dinner? Do you have to stay, 6 feet apart the whole time? Do you wear masks, etc.? These are not questions that all of us or any of us have clear-cut answers to right now. I mean, New York City has some amazing guidelines that came out, and I'm so glad that we have them. But these are things that people are going to have to decide for themselves. My recommendation would be that people take the time to do that thinking before they go on the date and before they make the plans for that date. So essentially determine your boundaries for what it is that you would like to happen and what you wouldn't feel okay with, given everything that we know about staying safe and staying healthy, and then being clear about those boundaries to the person that you're setting up the date with. So, hello, yes, going on the date, okay.
Yeah.
This is what I would like to happen. How do you feel about that? Can we make that happen? A lot of times on dates, we kind of just go with the flow, and we don't do this. But I think this is how we have to date for the time being. We have to be really thoughtful about what that activity is and what it can and cannot look like. And then if it feels like you're on that date, you're walking through the park, and you're wishing that you could do something else, to notice that, and I'm here to, from afar, to say that's completely valid. Like, if you feel torn about feeling for the first time in months, perhaps, a real connection or like a loin tension or just an affection that you haven't had the opportunity to feel and you now do, and you can't act on that. I just really want to validate how new this is for so many people in so many contexts. And all I could say I hear you is that be present for that feeling, and be present also for the joy that you might be getting in that moment. What does it look like to see that person across from you in the park? What does it feel like to hear them?
Because that's the very thing that people long to feel again when they are in relationship, like, oh, that feeling of first falling in love, or that desire, or that tension.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of tension. A lot of sexual tension. Hopefully, sensitive people are like taking precautions.
Yeah, you guys, I could talk to you for hours. There's so many things, because I love the conversation. I love the ability to be open, and at the very least, I so appreciate the work that you are both doing to just validate any experience anyone is having, and to normalize you're human. This is part of being human. There's no shame in it. And here, let me mirror that back to you to give you the confidence to say, okay, now I can go do something different with that.
Absolutely. That is what we are all about. And it is probably the greatest joy to be able to, it's a gift that you can give someone to do that for them. And so it's really an amazing life to get to live to do that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for being part of the summit. I hope you continue to stay healthy and stay safe. And as I've been saying, stay sane. And I really think that all the tools and resources this summit's providing is going to give people the ability to do that a little bit easier, and to be able to say, in all these different areas of my life, here are some different experts doing amazing work to give people the tools, whether it's, in your dating and your sex life and your internal work and your traumas, whatever it is, that, there's a huge, wonderful resource pool that we're all drawing upon right now. So thanks for being part of it.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. And thank you for doing the summit. It's so awesome and so needed right now.
Well, talk about being in service. It's, when we've got tools to share, all we want to do is share them, because we're here to provide resources. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.